Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Naval Network. National Naval Battle. From patrol boats to aircraft carrier fleet, all humans in the Blue Star world were pulled into an unknown world overnight by an unknown existence, all of which were oceans. With a small patrol boat in hand, everyone embarked on a survival journey in the era of great navigation. Here, in addition to the Blue Star humans, there are also extraterrestrial humans from various outer planets who sacrifice their lives, shed their blood, and fight hard for the survival of their respective planets. Yi Bai, an ordinary young man from the Earth era, unexpectedly appeared in this ocean world and became a member of the Blue Star human, participating in such a bloody game. With the will of Blue Star's favor, he obtained a 100% explosive rate of the Golden Finger, as well as a unique space crystal providing super-large space. After sinking other players' ships, he obtained more supplies in the fallen wooden crates and continuously upgraded his patrol boat. Gunboats, destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and aircraft carriers were also formed. Feilu Naval Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Navigation World. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Yi Bai shook his head, jumped up from the ground, and looked around. His eyes were filled with fear, and his face instantly became very ugly. The sun hung high in the sky, warm sunshine shining on Yi Bai's body, but it couldn't warm Yi Bai's somewhat cold heart at the moment. The swaying breeze around him carried a unique smell of seawater. As an ordinary young man living in inland areas since childhood, Yi Bai had never been to the seaside and did not know what the taste of seawater was. However, at this moment, he knew clearly that the special smell in the wind was the scent of the sea. You have to ask Yi Bai why he dares to be so certain. The reason is simple. At a glance, there is a vast ocean around him, endless and blue, deep and bottomless. Looking down through the sea, you can occasionally see some fish swimming in the sea. Although it was unclear what had happened, Yi Bai immediately ruled out the possibility of pranks. After all, he was in the inland area, and the city he lived in was only near the river, which was still 108,000 miles away from the sea. Even if someone played a prank, it was impossible to sneak Yi Bai unconscious from the mainland into the sea overnight. At least none of his friends around him had the ability to do so. Since it's not a prank, then there's only one possibility left. Yi Bai, who often browses various novel websites, almost immediately thought of a possibility, which is time travel. Only time travel can explain why such a strange thing happened. Yi Bai may be very ordinary on Earth. Apart from being handsome and often being asked for WeChat numbers by socialites, he doesn't have much strength, but his psychological resilience and acceptance are still strong. Even if he guessed that he had traveled for some special reason, Yi Bai was not too afraid or panicked. Anyway, his development on the Earth in the previous life was not satisfactory. Changing the environment and world may also be a good choice, not to mention the saying circulating online that all travelers have standard golden fingers. Therefore, for Yi Bai's ordinary life in his past life, it is unknown whether he could develop better in this unknown new world with the help of his golden fingers. On the boundless blue sea, the feeling of being down to earth and the slight swaying sensation beneath his feet all told Yi Bai that he should be standing on a boat at this moment. Just as I was about to turn my head and look at the situation of the ship I was on, a strange sound suddenly came from my ear. Hello Blue Star player, you have been successfully selected to become a participant in the game of the Great Navigation World. Here, each player will have an initial patrol boat, and survival, combat, and development will be all the themes of the Great Navigation World. All your actions will be closely related to the life and death of the Blue Star world in the world of navigation. In addition to Blue Star players, there are also humans from various other planets who will be your enemies. You are naturally in a hostile state, and if you fail, your world will become a colony of the winning planet, and you will become slaves to each other. This is a life and death game world where the winner is the king and the loser is the enemy. After sinking the enemy's warship, a treasure chest will drop, containing various supplies such as food, water, equipment, ammunition, materials, and more. To protect your star ball from being enslaved by others, first work hard to survive. Blue Star player, good luck to you. After listening to this long passage, Yi Bai was immediately stunned and opened his mouth wide, with a hint of salty sea breeze constantly surging into his wide-open mouth. After a while, Yi Bai regained his senses and quickly recalled the words he had just heard. Finally, he understood his current situation. He had indeed traveled, but it was not a conventional journey. Instead, he was treated as a member of the Blue Star world by an unfamiliar existence and dragged into a magical world of national navigation. Faced with this situation, as well as the game content just mentioned, Yi Bai, who originally had good psychological resilience, also felt a bit uneasy. What is the situation? How did he enter a world similar to survival for all? And it's not just about striving for survival, but also taking on the responsibility of protecting the Blue Star world from being enslaved by aliens. But most importantly, Yi Bai is not a Blue Star human, but an authentic Earth human. What is the relationship between the life and death of the Blue Star world and him? But this idea only lingered in Yi Bai's mind for a moment before disappearing. He did not forget the voice that had just echoed in his ear, but calling him a Blue Star player, it was obvious that the mysterious existence that pulled him into the world of navigation had already regarded him as a Blue Star human, not an Earth human. No matter what kind of problem may have arisen that led to such a mistake in the seemingly divine and omnipotent mysterious existence, it is an unchangeable fact that Yi Bai was treated as a member of the Blue Star human and entered the world of navigation. Yi Bai does not believe that he can find the mysterious existence to appeal and let him or it send him back to Earth. Not to mention that Yi Bai had no way of finding the mysterious existence behind it. Even if it was found, what would happen? Based on the behavior of the mysterious existence, it is obvious that it is not a fuel-efficient lamp. Yi Bai would not be taken seriously and would not pay attention to his appeal. Yi Bai wouldn't do things that he knew were useless, and he couldn't handle them properly. Because of his appeal, he let the mysterious existence behind him know about the existence of the Earth, and by the way, he brought in the humans on Earth. That was a huge joke. Since that's the case, for the current Yi Bai, he can only survive well in the world of navigation. No matter what the final outcome of the Blue Star world is, at least he must work hard to survive. Although he is recognized as a member of the Blue Star player, in his heart, there is no emotional attachment to the Blue Star world. And according to the conditions given by the mysterious existence, as long as Yi Bai can develop well and survive well, to some extent, it is also helping the Blue Star world, isn't it? Therefore, Yi Bai has no burden in his heart. After thinking through all of this, Yi Bai's panicked mood was calmed down. He closed his wide mouth and his face regained composure. He turned around and looked at his patrol boat. Mysterious existence, as mentioned earlier, all players entering the world of great navigation will receive a patrol boat, which is their base and the foundation for their survival in this perilous world of great navigation. Chapter 2. Activation of Identity. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. Turning around, Yi Bai confirmed with just one glance that he was right at the bow of the patrol boat, and behind him was the not-too-spacious front deck, where there was also a large cannon present. However, unlike the fully enclosed turrets on conventional warships, the entire cannon is fixed on the foredeck in the form of field guns used by the Army, and there is no other protection on the cannon except for a shield. This type of outdoor artillery cannot provide any protective effect at all, as it does not require shells to hit directly. Even if a bullet hits, the crew members operating the artillery will suffer heavy casualties. And not only that, but most importantly, because this gun is fixed on the front deck as a whole, the muzzle cannot be adjusted at will, which means that the gun on the front deck can only fire towards the front, which is undoubtedly a great limitation for a patrol boat. Yi Bai made a secret roast. He walked past the gun and came to the middle of the patrol boat. There was a huge cabin here. He pushed the side door to enter the cabin. At the front of the cabin was a small cockpit with a rudder and dashboard. Standing behind the rudder, he could clearly see the front deck and the sea in front through the huge transparent glass. Walking backwards along the edge of the patrol boat, there were several other cabins. Yi Bai opened the doors of all cabins and took a rough look. The kitchen, bathroom, crew dormitories, and warehouse were all ready. Yi Bai paid special attention to the crew dormitory, which should be the largest among all cabins, with a total of 6 high and low beds placed inside, enough to accommodate 12 people. And near the rear deck, there was also an iron staircase that led to the second-floor building. Yi Bai calmly climbed up the stairs to the second floor of the building, which had a noticeably smaller area and fewer compartments. The bridge should be located at the forefront, which is separated by an iron plate at the rear. There is transparent glass in front and on both sides, allowing for a clear view of everything outside. In the center of the interior, there is also a huge wooden table, probably for the sake of maritime navigation. The legs of the table are also firmly fixed on the deck, so there is no need to worry about any shaking. Behind the bridge, there is a larger bedroom with a single bed, a separate bathroom, a desk, and so on. The conditions are not much better than the crew dormitory on the lower level, clearly belonging to Yi Bai's bedroom. Satisfied, Yi Bai nodded and returned to the position of the bridge. He felt a bit strange in his heart. Judging from the gun on the bow, which was not a small caliber, it clearly belonged to the level of modern technology. Even if patrol boats are not formal naval combat vessels, they still have combat capabilities at least. Since they even have a bridge, how could they still have a separate cockpit set up at the lower level? It should not be integrated with the bridge. For Yi Bai, who was not very familiar with the Navy, he didn't understand. He just felt a bit strange. After all, this was no longer the Earth he was familiar with, but an unknown world of navigation. Perhaps the warships here were so strange. Standing in the middle of the bridge, Yi Bai looked at the wooden table in the middle. At this moment, he realized that there was a model of a patrol boat placed on this wooden table, which looked almost like the patrol boat under his feet. Curious in his heart, Yi Bai reached out and picked up the model on the table. However, as soon as he picked it up, it turned into a golden light and penetrated Yi Bai's body. Before Yi Bai could be surprised, the same voice as before came to his ears again. Congratulations to the player, the navigation system has been successfully activated, identity authentication has been successful, and the systems section has been officially opened. Wishing the player a pleasant game. Upon hearing this sound, Yi Bai suddenly felt a bit confused. No wonder he had just wandered through the entire patrol boat and couldn't find a way to start it. Anyway, for him who didn't know how to sail, this was indeed a huge challenge. And not only him, but probably the vast majority of Blue Star humans do not have similar related experiences. That mysterious existence has brought them to the world of navigation, and it is impossible for these inexperienced and ignorant individuals to personally pilot patrol boats. Is this obviously unrealistic? Now Yi Bai finally understands that such an identity authentication process is necessary. After calming down, Yi Bai almost silently recited in his heart, "Navigation system." Then a transparent panel appeared in front of him, covering the various sections of the newly activated navigation system, including the fleet section, crew section, mall section, chat section, and trading section. Yi Bai first opened the fleet section, where only the icon of a warship existed. It was the patrol boat under his feet, and the relevant attributes of the patrol boat were also displayed next to it. Patrol boat can be named displacement. 75 tons, speed. 10 knots, equipment. 175 mm front deck gun, armor. 500. The attributes are very simple, with only a few basic introductions, but they are already sufficient for Yi Bai. Before closing the fleet section, Yi Bai casually changed his first patrol boat to the Yanhuang. There are countless products in the shopping mall section behind, including various foods, weapons and equipment, ammunition, fuel, and so on. Whatever you can think of or can't think of, there is everything in the mall, and Yi Bai was drooling at it. Unfortunately, although the mall has not set any other restrictions, the only requirement is that players need to have enough money, but unfortunately, Yi Bai is now penniless and has no money at all. He cannot afford to buy a single grain of rice. Helplessly closing the mall section, Yi Bai continued to check the system section behind him. The chat section goes without saying, as the name suggests, it should be a place for players to communicate. Yi Bai was also curious about the reactions of other players and instinctively clicked on the chat section, only to find that there were already countless pieces of information flowing rapidly inside, almost like a quick swipe of the screen. Watching Yi Bai feel dizzy, he struggled to resist the nausea in his heart. He reluctantly read some of the players' comments, but couldn't bear it anymore and withdrew from the chat channel. However, through the player comments just now, Yi Bai also realized that he was indeed assigned to the camp of Blue Star humans. This chat section can only be used by players who are also Blue Star humans, and humans from other planets cannot enter. However, at this moment, most Blue Star players are feeling a bit panicked and don't understand what has happened. Even though they have either actively or passively activated the patrol boat, verified their identity, and become formal players, it is obviously not easy for them to accept all of this. Chapter 3. Drifting Wooden Boxes. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. However, at this moment, Yi Bai didn't have the heart to watch these players groan in pain. He still had to continue researching this game system. The other sections have already been clarified, leaving only the final trading section and crew section that have not been reviewed yet. Firstly, the trading section was opened, but it was empty with nothing inside. It's normal to think about it. Now that everyone has just entered the world of navigation, many people haven't even figured out where to trade things. Unlike the open system mall section, this trading section is used for private transactions between players, but it is unclear whether all players can participate in this transaction or only players from the same planet can participate, which is currently unknown. Among the several major sections, the last crew section is what Yi Bai is most looking forward to. As the name suggests, this should be a place where Yi Bai can recruit crew members, which is the most important function for a dry duck like Yi Bai. Setting sail, he doesn't know how to shoot guns. As an adult man, he naturally does not know how to be serious. He really doesn't know how to be serious. In this situation, without the help of the crew, he couldn't even sail the ship, let alone if he were to pilot the patrol boat under his feet to fight against those alien players, wouldn't he go to die? Therefore, in order to survive better, Yi Bai urgently needs the help of professional crew members. As soon as the crew section was opened, many character icons appeared on the transparent panel. Yi Bai looked at them one by one and saw that these character icons were divided into navigators, lookouts, marine engineers, pilots, gun crew members, damage control members, ordinary sailors, and so on, almost including all personnel in all positions on a warship. Yi Bai's guess is not wrong. This crew section is indeed for players to recruit crew members, but as players, they can only choose a certain type of crew member and the system will randomly recruit them. As for whether the recruits are beginners or veterans, it depends on the player's luck. Unable to resist some excitement, Yi Bai rubbed his hands. He was about to recruit a few crew members and start the patrol boat, but the prompts from the game system made his face completely black in an instant. Damn it, this crew section is just like the previous mall section, both visible and intangible. Recruiting crew members also requires spending money. Yi Bai is now a poor person, where can he afford to recruit crew members? Feeling frustrated, Yi Bai closed the system section and did not continue to stay on the bridge. He went down the stairs again to the horizontal deck and stood at the bow of the ship. Looking at the slightly undulating sea, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. The current situation is very bad. Without money, it is impossible to recruit crew members. Without the help of professional crew members, Yi Bai cannot guarantee that he can survive in such a large world of navigation. And it's not just him, there must be many players like him now. After all, there are always only a few players who can pilot their own ships, and most players don't even know how to sail. Yi Bai shook his head somewhat helplessly. He didn't believe that the mysterious existence behind him would give all players such a deadly start. There must have been something he had overlooked. At this moment, Yi Bai's eyes, which were originally somewhat empty, immediately froze. He took 2 steps forward and walked to the edge of the patrol boat, frowning as he looked ahead at the sea. I saw a square wooden box suddenly emerging from the originally empty sea, undulating with the waves. Yi Bai was very certain that just now, the wooden box still didn't exist, as if it had suddenly refreshed. This strange scene made Yi Bai subconsciously think that the wooden box might not be so simple. Seeing that the wooden box was still some distance away from the patrol boat, Yi Bai's heart twitched. He quickly searched for suitable tools on the deck, preparing to retrieve the wooden box and see if there might be a solution to his current predicament inside. But there were not many things on the patrol boat, and there were even fewer tools that could be used to pick up wooden crates from the sea. After searching for a long time, Yi Bai only found a harpoon that could be used as a tool. However, at this point, the wooden crate, which was originally some distance away from the patrol boat, had unknowingly approached the edge of the boat and was about to collide with the side of the ship. At this moment, Yi Bai couldn't help but search for other tools, so he used his harpoon and put in a lot of effort to finally retrieve the wooden box from the sea. Don't take it too seriously, it's just a process anyway. The author himself doesn't know if he can use a harpoon to get the wooden box up, so just pretend it's okay. Placing the wooden box on the front deck, Yi Bai, who had expended a lot of effort, sat on the deck and rested for a while before regaining his energy. He was ready to open the wooden box and see what was inside. As soon as the wooden box was opened, several things appeared on the deck, but the box disappeared. At the same time, the system's prompt sound sounded in Yi Bai's ear. Congratulations to the player for successfully opening the treasure chest and obtaining 1 kilogram of whole wheat bread, 2,000 milliliters of purified water, and 300 yuan of money. Yi Bai looked at the things on the deck with some surprise, and indeed, as the system prompt said, a large bag of bread, a large bottle of pure water, and 3 100 yuan bills, all of which were the common currency in the world of navigation. Seeing such a thing, Yi Bai finally breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Indeed, the system will not give players a dead start, but will still provide certain beginner benefits. However, these beginner benefits are not directly distributed to all players, but are obtained through wooden crates drifting on the sea surface, requiring players to rely on their own abilities to catch them. However, no matter what, with these supplies, at least Yi Bai's daily food and water needs can be met. At least he doesn't have to worry about starving to death. As for the greater use of money, whether it's purchasing supplies in the shopping mall or recruiting professional sailors, money is indispensable. With his first harvest, Yi Bai now felt full of strength. He stood up again from the deck, walked back to the bow of the ship, looked around, and stared closely at the situation on the sea, ready to search for the next wooden box. When checking the crew section before, Yi Bai had already noticed that the recruitment price for most crew members is 500 yuan, while he currently only has 300 yuan, which is still a bit far from recruiting crew members. He urgently needs to obtain more wooden crates. I don't know if it's the system settings or the special rules of the world of navigation. The wooden crates on the sea are not endless. After picking up the first one, it took an hour for Yi Bai to see the shadow of the second one again. I picked up the second wooden box, and when I opened it, I found that the contents inside were similar to the first wooden box, with only basic food, pure water, and 300 yuan, which was pitifully scarce. Chapter 5. Recruitment of Crew Members. You are listening at novelfull.audio. But no matter how pitiful the supplies in the wooden crate may be, it is completely sufficient for the current Yi Bai, because the total amount of money in the 2 crates has reached 600 yuan, which is enough for him to recruit his first sailor from the crew section. Without time to put the scattered food and drinking water on the deck into the warehouse, Yi Bai couldn't help but open the crew section, directly selected the driver, and then chose recruitment. Detected that the player is recruiting crew members, deducting 500 yuan in funds, recruitment process is starting. Congratulations to the player, successfully recruiting a skilled driver. Wishing the player a pleasant game as the system beeped, a young man in his 20s wearing a white sailor uniform appeared on the front deck. Upon seeing Yi Bai, he immediately stood at attention and saluted, "Hello, Captain." Yi Bai was a bit at a loss and quickly raised his hand to return a non-standard military salute, saying, "It's good to be here. The matter of sailing depends entirely on you." The pilot put down his hand, smiled, and said, "Yes, please rest assured, Captain. I have 1 year of experience in piloting warships and will not disappoint you." After speaking, without waiting for further instructions from Yi Bai, he walked straight into the narrow cockpit. After a commotion in the cabin, the patrol boat under his feet suddenly let out a roar of the engine. At the same time, the patrol boat, which was originally stationary, slowly started to move. As soon as the patrol boat started, the pilot stood in front of the rudder and began operating the rudder with both hands, slowly moving in one direction. Feeling the moist sea breeze blowing continuously during the patrol boat's journey, Yi Bai's face also showed a hint of smile. Finally, he had the first crew member. He had already considered that once he had enough money, the first crew members to recruit were the pilot and gunner. One is responsible for piloting the patrol boat, and the other is responsible for operating the deck guns on the bow of the boat. For current patrol boats, being able to hit and run is the most important thing. Once a crisis occurs, they can respond promptly. Even if they cannot fight, they can still set sail and escape in time, right? As for the other crew members, it's not that they are unimportant, but their priority is one level lower compared to the driver and gunner. Standing at the bow of the ship, facing the constantly blowing sea breeze, Yi Bai's 2 eyes widened. Previously, he stayed in place and waited for the wooden crate to come, which was too inefficient. Now that the patrol boat has moved, it should be much easier to find the wooden crate. He plans to recruit a professional gunner among the crew members and needs to continue obtaining supplies from the wooden crates. While paying attention to the situation on the surrounding sea, Yi Bai opened the crew section. Due to the successful recruitment of the first crew member, the crew section has been divided into 2 parts by the system. One part is the previous section content, specifically designed to recruit various crew members, while the other part is a newly opened system that displays information on all crew members currently under Yi Bai's command. Currently, there is a lone crew member's information on the entire page. Sailor. Pilot, identity. Yanhuang driver, level. Proficient, loyalty. 80. After the crew information attribute, there is a small line of text with a special note that all crew members are divided into several levels based on experience and skills, from low to high. Beginner, proficient, expert, master, and elite. In the recruitment process of crew members, players can only specify the type and profession of the recruited crew members, but the specific proficiency level is randomly determined by the system. From this perspective, Yi Bai's first recruitment was not lucky, it can only be said to be average. After all, it was only 1 level higher than the new hand's proficiency level, which is far from enough. But it doesn't matter, having something is better than not having it. Now we have a good start, and the days ahead are still long. We can always recruit some capable crew members. Strictly speaking, the Yanhuang patrol boat is not a military ship, at most it can be considered an armed ship, with a speed of only 10 knots. Therefore, its sailing speed is not very fast, but this speed makes it convenient for Yi Bai to search for wooden crates on the sea. As soon as the patrol boat started moving, its efficiency was much higher than waiting for the rabbit. In the same hour, Yi Bai discovered 2 small wooden crates again, and with the help of the pilot, he easily retrieved both crates. The supplies in the 2 wooden boxes were not too many. One of the boxes was similar to the previous 2, consisting of food, water, and money. However, the second box surprised Yi Bai unexpectedly. There is no food or water inside, instead it is a set of repair materials. According to the system, after the ship is damaged, the repair crew can use these repair materials to repair the damaged parts of the ship. This is undoubtedly important for navigation on the sea. Yi Bai did not forget that this world of great navigation is not peaceful, with a large number of extraterrestrial players present. Once both sides encounter, a life-and-death naval battle will inevitably erupt. Once a naval battle breaks out, it is even more common for ships to be damaged, and in this case, ship maintenance becomes very important. He happily collected the repair materials and money in the wooden box, and Yi Bai roughly counted them. Unfortunately, he did not receive any money in the second wooden box, leaving Yi Bai with only 400 yuan in his hand, which was not enough to recruit gunners again. After looking at the piles of bread and water on the front deck, Yi Bai sent the pilot back to the cockpit to pilot the patrol boat. Yi Bai personally put all these bread and water in the patrol boat's warehouse as a reserve of supplies. Returning to the deck, Yi Bai paid attention to the possible wooden crates on the sea surface and opened the chat section, preparing to see the situation of other Blue Star players. It has been 3 hours since entering the world of navigation, and at this moment, except for some players with poor psychological resilience, most people have accepted reality and started exploring in the new world. Many players have also discovered wooden crates floating on the sea and successfully salvaged them, obtaining initial beginner supplies and having the capital to survive. Looking at the comments from numerous Blue Star players, Yi Bai was greatly puzzled because he had discovered a huge problem from the comments of other players. That's because not every wooden crate salvaged from the sea by other players contained supplies, and there were even empty crates, which surprised Yi Bai a bit. A total of 4 wooden boxes were successfully salvaged by Yi Bai from the front, back, and back. Although there were not many supplies inside, there was never an empty box, but all of them had supplies. Why did this happen? Chapter 5. First Encounter of Enemy. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. Yi Bai was not sure what the reason was in his heart, and there were too few examples. Perhaps he was lucky enough to open 4 wooden boxes in a row and there might be supplies inside. Standing at the bow of the ship, Yi Bai was focused on the situation on the sea, preparing to retrieve several more wooden crates. He still needed more funds to recruit new crew members, and there were still vacancies in the artillery team, right? Just as Yi Bai was staring at the sea, a loud bang suddenly came from a distance, like a muffled thunder. This startled Yi Bai in his heart, and he quickly looked up, only to find a small black spot flying from the sky and landing in the sea near the bow of the patrol boat. With a loud bang, the black spot that fell into the sea suddenly exploded violently, splashing a large amount of seawater and landing at the bow of the ship. Yi Bai, who was standing at the bow of the ship, was drenched in the seawater and felt a deep chill. This time, even if Yi Bai was stupid, he realized that he had been attacked by the enemy, and someone was shelling his patrol boat from a distance. At this moment, the pilot in the cockpit also stood up and shouted loudly, "Captain, we have found a patrol boat ahead that is shelling our ship. Please give instructions." Being inexplicably bombarded, Yi Bai was instantly enraged. Although according to the mysterious existence, the world of great navigation has never been a safe world, and all players here are hostile to each other due to their respective planets. Yi Bai had already been mentally prepared, otherwise he wouldn't have rushed to salvage the wooden crate and obtain resources. He wanted to recruit crew members as soon as possible, and even placed the gunner in the second priority position to ensure the combat effectiveness of the patrol boat. But he never expected that this moment would come so quickly. Now that the gunners had not yet been recruited, the enemy had already appeared in front of him, and he could only rush into battle. Yi Bai's heart was filled with infinite emotion at this moment. Fortunately, he had acted quickly enough to recruit the driver, otherwise he would not have been able to move and could only stay in place and be beaten. Without looking back, he roared loudly, "Operate the rudder well, maintain the bow against the enemy, bring the distance closer to the enemy, and we will counterattack at close range." "Yes, Captain." The pilot agreed loudly and returned to the cockpit, maintaining the highest speed of the patrol boat and quickly charging towards the direction of the incoming shells. And Yi Bai also left the bow of the ship and stood next to the deck gun, ready to try how to operate this gun. Without a professional gunner, Yi Bai could only personally go to battle and fire a counterattack. With his eyes fixed on the deck cannon, a property panel appeared next to the cannon. Deck cannon, caliber 75 mm, firepower 150, range 8000 m, interval 10s. The attribute panel introduced the situation of this deck gun, which made Yi Bai more familiar with artillery. But now he can't care about these things. Recalling the war movies in his memory, he opened a large wooden box next to the artillery, which contained slender shells. Yi Bai had limited knowledge and had no idea whether they were high explosive or armor-piercing shells. Picking up a shell casually, he filled it into the gun gate behind the deck gun, then closed the gun gate and searched left and right, but did not find the presence of the propellant package, which saved Yi Bai a lot of trouble. Note: small caliber artillery uses fixed ammunition and does not require a specialized firing kit. Simply screw on the fuse to load it into the barrel and fire it. However, to enhance the survival chances of players, all the shells attached to the deck gun are already equipped with fuses and can be fired at any time. Picking up the nearby gun rope, Yi Bai exerted all his strength and pulled hard. The deck gun exploded with a loud noise, and the not too strong recoil caused the small tonnage patrol boats to sway non-stop. Yi Bai almost stood still and sat down on the deck. But at least this attempt at shelling was successful. A shell quickly flew out of the muzzle and flew towards the distance. From afar, one could already see the shadow of another patrol boat, which was no different from the Yan Huang under Yi Bai's feet. It was rowing a wave on the sea and rushing towards the direction of the Yan Huang at full speed. As they approached rapidly, the patrol boat on the opposite side let out another roar, and a shell swept across the sky, landing behind the HMS Yan Huang, causing countless waves. From the shooting effect of these two cannons, it can be seen that the guy firing from the opposite side is similar to Yi Bai. They should both be two knives, and this accuracy is really not a problem. Two shells were fired consecutively, both still far from the Yan Huang. Of course, the shells fired by Yi Bai also fell far into the sea and did not harm a single strand of the opponent's patrol boat. In this way, two novice rookies kept firing cannons at each other across a long distance, while the patrol boats on both sides were still getting closer. At this point, Yi Bai had already confirmed that the other party should have successfully recruited pilots just like himself, otherwise it would be impossible to move forward and fire at the same time. But even so, the two rookies pecked at each other, causing no harm to each other except for countless waves on the sea surface. Until the distance between the patrol boats on both sides was brought closer to a certain extent, Yi Bai and another player became more familiar with deck guns through live fire shooting, and their shooting accuracy was instantly improved. Bang! A shell landed next to the front deck of the opposing patrol boat. This was the first shell that had directly hit the patrol boat since the start of the war. Although the damage was not significant, it was a great surprise for Yi Bai, who fired the gun, greatly boosting his morale. Being hit by a shell, the player on the opposite side was obviously a bit panicked and quickly quickened their movements. Finally, a shell landed next to the side of the Yan Huang ship and exploded, tearing open a small hole in the side. Both patrol boats on both sides have been damaged, but for Yi Bai, the damage is undoubtedly much smaller, and his hand movements are not slower than those of the opposing player. Every 10 seconds, a shell flies out of the muzzle and lands near the opponent's patrol boat, and even another shell directly lands on the opponent's front deck. After a violent explosion, the shelling from the other party disappeared instantly. Yi Bai, who was not sure why, quickly looked up because there was still a considerable distance between the two sides and no binoculars. Yi Bai could not determine what was happening to the other party's patrol boat. But the thick smoke and fire rising from the bow position, as well as the sudden interruption of the shells, undoubtedly did not tell Yi Bai that the enemy's front deck should have been hit hard, and it is even possible that even the only deck gun was hit by the shells. Chapter 6. Victory in Battle. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. Although it is unclear what the situation is with the patrol boat on the opposite side, since the other party has lost their ability to resist, there is no need to hesitate. Of course, they will not spare the opportunity and will continue to chase and fight fiercely. Without the occasional interference of shells falling from his head, Yi Bai completely let go and fired one round of shells through the deck artillery. And I don't know if it's because the distance is constantly getting closer, or because Yi Bai's practice makes perfect. In short, the hit rate of the shells launched by Yi Bai is getting higher and higher, and more shells are falling onto the opponent's patrol boat. Bang, 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 the flames of explosions kept rising one after another, and when all players first entered the world of navigation, there was only one patrol boat. Most of the decks and even the superstructure on the patrol boat were made of wood. Amidst the fierce explosion and flames, these pieces of wood were ignited one after another, and in the end, the entire patrol boat caught fire, and the players on board had completely lost their ability to resist. The fire on the patrol boat did not burn for too long. As the fire spread to the entire horizontal deck, the ammunition boxes piled up next to the guns on the front deck were also ignited by the fire, and then things became very simple. Bang! Under the explosion of a large number of shells, the entire patrol boat was blown to pieces, spinning on the sea and gradually becoming silent. After the patrol boat completely disappeared from the sea returned to a calm state, with only a large wooden box floating on the surface, rising and falling with the wind and waves. I breathed a sigh of relief in my heart. During the intense battle, Yi Bai's adrenaline surged all over his body and he fell into a state of excitement, so he didn't feel anything. But now, as the enemy's patrol boat was completely sunk and the battle came to an end, Yi Bai also recovered from his excitement and suddenly felt his whole body sore, especially his arms, which were constantly carrying shells, were swollen in a circle, like a big carrot. The battle ended, and the pilot who was originally focused on operating the rudder in the cockpit temporarily stopped the Yanhuang. He hurriedly ran to the front deck and helped Yi Bai, who was limp on the deck like a puddle of mud, up. He whispered, "Captain, how are you? Are you okay?" With the help of the driver, Yi Bai stood up and shook his head, saying, "I'm fine, but I'm a bit tired. Hurry up and get the wooden box that the other person dropped. There must be something good inside." "Yes, Captain." The driver agreed and quickly returned to the cockpit, restarted the Yanhuang, quickly approached the side of the large wooden box, and personally salvaged the fluctuating wooden box on the sea surface. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yi Bai opened the fleet section and examined the specific properties of the Yanhuang. Yanhuang Hao, displacement. 75 tons, speed. 10 knots, equipment. 175 mm front deck gun, armor. 350 out of 500, reparable. In the battle just now, 2 shells hit the flame yellow. Although they did not directly hit the key points, the damage to the wooden flame yellow was not light. The original full value of 500 armor points is now only 350 points. Fortunately, the shells fired by the other party only grazed the ship's side and fell into the sea. If they were to hit directly, with the power of a 75 mm gun, it would probably sink the Yanhuang completely with up to 4 shells. And more importantly, according to that mysterious setting, naval battles in the world of great navigation are different from real naval battles. There will be a situation where one shot enters the soul, but no matter how many shells are hit, as long as the armor of the ship is not completely depleted, the ship will not remain silent. However, the damage caused by shells to ships still exists. For example, Yi Bai's lucky shot just now almost destroyed the deck gun of the enemy patrol boat, causing the enemy to lose the ability to counterattack. But no matter what, the battle finally came to an end, and the first crisis Yi Bai faced after coming to the world of navigation was completely lifted. The next moment was the harvest. Looking at the large wooden box salvaged by the driver, Yi Bai's face showed a hint of smile. When he first entered the world of navigation, that mysterious existence had said that after sinking a ship of hostile forces, the wooden box would fall. There are many spoils of war inside the wooden box, which may be supplies, equipment, or other items. In short, the contents inside are good rewards for any player. Excitedly rubbing his hands, Yi Bai eagerly opened the large wooden box in front of him. As the outer shell of the box disappeared, a lot of things fell off the deck. The system's prompt sound accurately gave the answer. Congratulations to the player, open the enemy ship drop box and obtain 5 kilograms of rice, 5 kilograms of fresh vegetables, 20 L of purified water, 20 75mm caliber shells, 10 L of fuel, and 2,000 yuan in money. Wishing the player continued hard work. While listening to the system's prompt messages and inspecting the supplies on the deck, Yi Bai's face burst into laughter, and as expected, he killed and set fire to the golden belt. I worked hard to salvage several wooden crates from the sea, only to obtain a little bit of supplies and resources, but now I have only sunk a hostile patrol boat, and surprisingly, I have gained so many good things. Food and water go without saying much, they are essential items for survival, but the quantity is much more than what is in a small wooden box. In addition, there is fuel, which is also a good thing. Patrol boats need to continuously consume fuel in order to sail on the sea. Although they are sold in the system mall, there are now ready-made spoils of war, which can also save some money, right? Needless to say, to ensure combat effectiveness, deck artillery requires the consumption of shells. At the beginning, the system equipped this artillery with 100 shells. In the recent battle, due to inexperienced operation and insufficient accuracy, Yi Bai consumed a lot of shells. Now that we have the spoils of these 20 shells, although they are not enough to make up for the consumption in previous battles, they can still be considered as a great way to compensate for Yi Bai's losses and replenish the ammunition reserves on the Yanhuang. A total of 2,000 yuan can be said to be a great surprise for Yi Bai, as it allows him to recruit 4 professional crew members from the crew section. In addition to the professional gunners he had planned from the beginning, he could also recruit several crew members for other positions, but Yi Bai still needs to carefully consider which type of crew to recruit. Let the driver stop the Yanhuang first, then move all the materials obtained from the large wooden box to the warehouse behind, take out some bread and water, and the two of them sit on the deck and simply eat something, recovering their strength and energy. During their meal, the two even salvaged a small wooden box that suddenly appeared from the sea, earning a small amount of supplies, which can be considered an unexpected joy. After finishing his meal, Yi Bai counted his material reserves and was about to recruit a maintenance personnel to repair the damaged area of the Yanhuang ship. However, the system suddenly sent a new prompt message. Detected that the player has successfully won their first naval battle and received a random gift pack. Congratulations to the player. Chapter 7. Space Crystal. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. The sudden system prompt startled Yi Bai's heart, but when he understood the meaning of the system, he felt a shock in his heart. Surprisingly, there were unexpected gains, and in front of him, a small white wooden box appeared, which seemed to be the random gift package that the system had just mentioned. Anyway, it was a free gift package. Without hesitation, Yi Bai opened the small white wooden box directly, and the contents inside turned into a white light that penetrated into Yi Bai's body and disappeared. The system prompt also sounded in his ear. Congratulations to the host. Successfully opened the system random gift package and received a system reward. 1 Space Crystal. Wishing players a pleasant game. Space Crystal. Looking at the blue diamond crystal that appeared in his hand, Yi Bai felt a wave of confusion in his mind. He never expected that the random reward in the system would actually reward a space crystal. The key is, damn it, what's the use of this thing? Just as Yi Bai was struggling to think about how to use this space crystal, a large amount of information suddenly entered his mind, making his head feel a bit dizzy and swollen. After finally regaining some energy, he finally figured out what the situation was. It turned out that the so-called space crystal had an extremely magical effect, which could change the space of any compartment on the patrol boat. For example, a cabin originally only had 10 square meters in size. After using this space crystal, the exterior of the cabin remained unchanged, but the internal space rapidly increased, becoming a huge space with an area of 100 square meters or even 1,000 square meters. In simple terms, this thing is like space compression technology, compressing the originally huge space into a small cabin, but inside it is a different world. According to the system introduction, the area of this expanded space is not fixed. After Yi Bai obtains new space crystals, he can continue to expand this space and even form a huge continent without any problem. With a movement in his heart, Yi Bai went directly to the small cabin located between the crew dormitory area and the warehouse. This cabin was not large, only a few square meters. Originally, Yi Bai intended to use it as an arsenal to store weapons and ammunition such as shells, but now that he had space crystals, he changed his mind in an instant. According to the information in his mind, Yi Bai walked into the small cabin and pressed the space crystal to the ground. Then, the sky blue space crystal burst out with a strong blue light, covering the entire cabin. The blue light was so dazzling that Yi Bai couldn't help but close his eyes. It wasn't until Yi Bai felt that the outside light was no longer so dazzling that he slowly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, Yi Bai's mouth opened into an O shape, because under the influence of spatial crystals, this small cabin of only a few square meters had undergone tremendous changes. The interior of the cabin became wider and longer, and the area had increased by an unknown number of times. However, although the area of the entire cabin has expanded countless times, it is empty inside, with nothing left. The wooden deck is still below, and the walls and ceilings are made of wood all around. Apart from serving as a warehouse, it seems to have no other use. Looking at the expanded cabin, Yi Bai nodded with satisfaction. With such a huge space on the patrol boat, there were really too many places to operate. Before, while idle and waiting for the treasure chest of supplies floating on the sea, Yi Bai browsed through the products in the system mall, some of which, when paired with this compressed space, could play a huge role. The products in the system mall, Paul Vientian, are not just blown out, but also include seeds that can be planted with soil, sand, stones, and various grains and fruits, including even mineral resources and oil resources. When Yi Bai saw these products, he had an idea in his heart, which was to find a way to build a logistics supply base, where he could plant food, fruits, and other consumables to supplement the daily needs of the fleet. Although there is a wide range of products in the system mall, including ready-made grains, fruits, and other supplies, they all require money. If one can build their own logistics supply base, these daily consumption materials can be completely self-sufficient. So as to save more money, strengthen his patrol boat or fleet, enhance his strength, and enable Yi Bai to survive better in this perilous world of navigation. Although Yi Bai had this idea before, the space on the patrol boat was limited. Not to mention the patrol boat, even if he upgrades it to the level of a battleship or aircraft carrier in the future, the space on the ship is still quite limited, which cannot allow Yi Bai to achieve his wild dreams. Unless a giant ship is specially built and internally modified to become a mobile logistics base, it will lack sufficient armament and armor. Once hit by enemy warships in naval battles, all the effort and money invested will be completely wasted. But now it's better, there's no need to specifically build a giant ship. This idea can become a reality on the Yanhuang, as long as there is enough space for crystals and no need to occupy more space, a logistics supply base can be built on the Yanhuang. As its flagship, the Yanhuang is naturally a key development target. Even if Yi Bai has more warships in the future, the Yanhuang will always be the most powerful one. Placing the logistics supply base on the Yanhuang is not a concern for safety. After all, to destroy this logistics supply base, the first step is to completely destroy the armor of the Yanhuang. At that time, Yi Bai will not be far from death. Whether or not there is this logistics supply base is not important anymore. Naming this cabin as the logistics cabin, Yi Bai opened the cabin door and returned to the deck, temporarily leaving it unattended. The future of the logistics supply base is very promising, but it requires a lot of funds and time to slowly develop. However, Yi Bai has just started and his resources are limited, so he can only temporarily use them to enhance the strength of the Yanhuang ship as much as possible. When he has more resources, he will consider developing the planting cabin. Recruit a few farmers and buy some soil for planting, as well as crops and fruits, to try farming and supply the Yanhuang with food and other supplies, especially fresh vegetables. When sailing on the sea, fresh vegetables and fruits can supplement the crew with sufficient vitamins, avoid some diseases at sea, and also help them maintain their combat effectiveness. Returning to the front deck, Yi Bai directly opened the crew section and prepared to continue recruiting the necessary crew members. Chapter 8. Recruiting again. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. Originally, in Yi Bai's plan, priority was given to recruiting drivers and gunners. Now that the drivers are in place, it should be the gunners' turn. But the sudden outbreak of the naval battle caused damage to the Yanhuang, requiring professional maintenance personnel to carry out repairs, which required recruiting maintenance crew members. However, these are not a big deal, after all, although the battle caused damage to the Yanhuang, it also obtained a lot of supplies, including as much as 2,000 yuan in money alone, which is enough for Yi Bai to recruit crew members. So with a wave of his hand, Yi Bai recruited a ship repairman and a gunner from the crew section. Detected that the player is recruiting crew members, deducting 1,000 yuan in funds, recruitment process is starting. Congratulations to the player for successfully recruiting a proficient ship repairman and a proficient ship artillery gunner. Wishing the player a pleasant game. This recruitment was fortunate enough to have recruited 2 skilled crew members at once, which is 1 level stronger than the skilled pilot recruited at the beginning. As the 2 figures gradually solidified on the front deck and finally formed a solid entity, Yi Bai spoke up and said, "Both of you, the Yanhuang was hit by 2 shells in the recent battle, and the hull was damaged. It needs to be repaired as soon as possible. The gunner is responsible for the deck artillery, always be prepared for battle, and we may encounter enemy attacks at any time." "Yes, Captain." The 2 crew members who had just arrived on the Yanhuang ship didn't have time to catch their breath when they were assigned a new task by Yi Bai. They didn't slack off immediately, saluted, and each went to work. The ship repairman made a trip to the warehouse and took out the repair materials that Yi Bai had previously obtained from the wooden box. He began using various tools to knock and strike at the damaged parts of the ship's hull. With the action of the ship repairman, Yi Bai instinctively opened the fleet section and checked the armor of the Yanhuang. He found that under the maintenance of the ship repairman, the armor value of the Yanhuang, which had originally decreased to 350 points, was gradually increasing. Although the speed was slow, with an increase of 1.2 points, it was very stable. It seems that as long as it continues for a period of time, it is likely to recover to the full value of 500 points. This result made Yi Bai feel quite interesting. Everything in the world of navigation seems so real, just like an independent second world. But some rules and settings are completely different from the real world, with a hint of game setting, such as ship getting shot and ship repair, all following the game settings. But this is really great news for all players. If everything else follows reality, after a ship is hit by a shell, it can only be repaired and restored to combat power by entering the shipyard. But here, there is no need for such trouble. As long as there are enough resources, even a ship repairman can easily handle it and restore the combat effectiveness of damaged ships in the first time. This is particularly important in the perilous world of navigation. After closing the systems section, Yi Bai turned his gaze to the gunner. After receiving orders from Yi Bai, the gunner became busy at the first moment. First, pull a pull tab behind the deck gun, open a large opening on the deck, and place the adjacent ammunition boxes inside one by one, neatly stacking them. Finally, only one box of shells is left next to the gun. Seeing this inexplicable small space, Yi Bai was somewhat stunned and couldn't help but ask, what's going on in this space? Why is there such an independent space on the deck? The gunner, who had stored all the ammunition boxes, chuckled and said, Captain, this deck gun belongs to open-air artillery and lacks turret protection. It is easy to be directly hit by enemy shells. A large number of shells are piled up next to the artillery, and once hit by the shells, there is a high probability of casualties. Therefore, there is an independent small space behind the artillery positions, which is specifically used to store shells. Although retrieving shells requires more effort and time, safety is much stronger. However, Captain, in order to ensure the continuity of artillery firing, it would be best if you could supplement me with the members of the artillery team as soon as possible. Only when the members of the artillery team work together can we maximize the power of this artillery. The gunner spoke while holding a long gun brush and delving deep into the barrel, carefully cleaning up the gunpowder residue inside the barrel to maintain the cannon. For the gunner, Yi Bai just nodded and had personally operated the gun. Yi Bai deeply knew how tiring it was to carry, load, and complete the firing alone. As the only weapon on the Yanhuang, it was necessary to ensure combat effectiveness. A complete artillery unit requires a considerable number of personnel, including a gunner, loader, sight, distance setter, and ammunition handler. Even for a relatively small caliber outdoor artillery, it still requires several more personnel to be equipped. In his heart, he secretly remembered the gunner's words, and Yi Bai put his thoughts back into the system's mall section. At the end of the day, the Yanhuang was just a patrol boat, with a small tonnage and limited combat capabilities, equipped with only one gun. For a rabbit suffering from a fear of insufficient firepower, with money, the first thing that came to mind was to enhance the firepower equipment on the Yanhuang as much as possible. In the shopping mall section of the system, there are countless weapons and equipment available for players to purchase, including a large number of naval guns, from 25mm mechanism guns to 105mm, 120mm, 150mm, 203mm, and even 406mm, 460mm caliber naval guns, which are all available, not only single-barreled, but also double and triple-mounted turrets. It can be said that as long as Yi Bai can allocate sufficient funds, he can purchase corresponding cannons from the system mall section and install them on the Yanhuang ship at any time. But the current problem is that the Yanhuang is just a patrol boat, with limited tonnage. Even in the game's systematized world of navigation, once the large caliber naval guns are installed on the ship, the huge recoil will probably completely scatter the entire patrol boat. Therefore, continuing to increase the number of artillery on the Yanhuang is clearly not a good solution, unless the tonnage of the Yanhuang can be increased and expanded, in order to equip more and larger artillery. But Yi Bai searched through the system mall section and couldn't find the expansion function for ships. It's unclear whether the system is currently not open or if there are methods for expanding ships that Yi Bai currently doesn't know. However, after browsing through the shopping mall section of the system, Yi Bai had to accept the fact that perhaps in the short term, he should not think about enhancing the actual combat effectiveness of the Yanhuang. Chapter 9. Purchase of Machine Guns. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. Keeping the pilot cruising, the Yanhuang continued to move forward, but in this vast world of navigation, the sea was everywhere, and even small islands could not be seen. The direction was no longer important. The idle gunner and Yi Bai stood together, paying attention to the wooden crates floating on the sea. Before the logistics module could function, all the supplies needed on the Yanhuang had to be obtained by opening the crates. Although there was no clock or watch to check the specific time, looking at the sun in the sky that was about to fall below sea level, Yi Bai knew that it was almost nightfall. Yi Bai had checked before and found that there were no electric lights installed inside patrol boats like the Yanhuang, which could not provide lighting for the boats. As for night navigation, it was even more unnecessary. Who knows if it might come into contact with other players' patrol boats. Yi Bai has already planned to anchor and stop sailing as soon as it gets dark, rest well for the night, and continue sailing after dawn. However, for the sake of safety at night, Yi Bai still needs to search for more wooden boxes and obtain more money. He has already planned to set up a machine gun position above the second-floor cabin, install a heavy machine gun, and equip it with a searchlight when enough funds are available. In the case of poor visibility at night, it is very likely that the opponent's patrol boat will only be detected when it approaches the vicinity of the Yanhuang. At such close range, the 75mm gun on the front deck cannot play a significant role and is not as practical as a heavy machine gun. If the funds obtained are sufficient, Yi Bai even wants to directly deploy a 25mm machine gun, which is a weapon that can make the Yanhuang safer at night. Standing on the front deck, Yi Bai and the gunner stared at the sea without blinking. Once they found any trace of the drifting wooden box, they immediately salvaged it. After the repair of the Yanhuang was completed and the armor was restored to its full value of 500 points, the ship maintenance soldier who had completed the work also rushed to help, accelerating the speed of salvaging the wooden box a bit. In this way, without blinking for a moment, I stared at the sea surface. Over time, my eyes became sore and swollen. Fortunately, not long after, the sun completely fell below the sea level, and the gaze that enveloped the entire sea disappeared, replaced by a thick darkness. Taking a gentle breath, Yi Bai ordered the ship to be stopped to save fuel, and the Yanhuang floated quietly on the sea surface. Food and water were taken out from the warehouse, and everyone was given something to eat and drink to replenish their energy. They were preparing for night shifts, and Yi Bai sat on the front deck, starting to inspect the just harvest. At the moment when the sun was setting, Yi Bai once again salvaged a total of 5 drifting wooden crates from the sea. With such high efficiency, Yi Bai couldn't help but wonder if he had truly become the European emperor due to his travels. This luck was really good. Open each of the 5 wooden boxes placed together one by one. The first 4 wooden boxes are not too special, which are conventional rewards such as food, water, and money. For Yi Bai, who is now lacking in everything, it is a great supplement. And when the last wooden box was opened, what was inside made Yi Bai ecstatic, because what was inside this wooden box was not regular food and water, and there was not even a penny left. Only a 75mm caliber cannon was placed inside. The contents of the wooden box were a 75mm caliber gun identical to the front deck gun on the Yanhuang, but it was shrunk many times. When taken out of the wooden box, it was like a toy gun. With a movement in his heart, Yi Bai walked to the position on the rear deck with the reduced 75mm cannon and placed it on top. As this reduced version of the 75mm gun was placed on the rear deck, a white light flashed, and the original small gun suddenly became much larger, just like the gun on the front deck. Looking at the newly released cannon, Yi Bai's mind twitched and a transparent attribute panel appeared in front of him. Deck cannon, caliber 75mm, firepower 150, range 8000 m, interval 10s. Yi Bai frowned slightly when he saw that this is almost the same attribute as the previous front deck gun. It is naturally a good thing for the Yanhuang to have one more gun. However, the biggest flaw of this type of deck gun is that it is fixed on the deck, and the muzzle cannot rotate and can only fire in one direction. In this situation, even if the Yanhuang is equipped with 2 deck guns, only one can fire on enemy ships, and it is not possible to use 2 guns to attack the enemy at the same time. Subsequently, Yi Bai's eyebrows relaxed and he let out a soft sigh. Anyway, having an additional cannon was always a good thing for the Yanhuang. At least when facing the pursuit of enemy patrol boats, he could have the ability to counterattack, which was also good. The crew who had eaten and drunk were greeted and all the supplies obtained from several wooden boxes were placed in the warehouse. Yi Bai followed the iron stairs to the top floor, looked at the flat top of the second floor, and directly opened the system wall. After the naval battle ended, he checked the goods inside and had already determined the target. Without any hesitation, he directly spent 1,200 yuan to purchase a Browning 12.7mm large-caliber heavy machine gun from the mall. Looking at the steel weapon suddenly appearing on the top floor, with a cold light flashing on the gun body and the ammunition box of 500 bullets gifted by the system, Yi Bai couldn't wait to start checking the properties of this heavy machine gun. Browning heavy machine gun, caliber 12.7mm, firepower 25, range 2000 m. The firepower may not be strong, far inferior to deck guns, but the firing rate is extremely fast. It is arranged on the top floor and the muzzle can be adjusted freely to attack targets in any direction, making it a good melee self-defense weapon. Unfortunately, the number of bullets given as a gift when purchasing weapons is too small, only 500 rounds. These bullets cannot be fired for long at the high firing rate of a heavy machine gun. Even if the firing rate is intentionally controlled, it will only take a few minutes to run out of these bullets. I want to continue buying some bullets, but looking at the prices in the system mall, this 12.7mm caliber bullet can only be bought for 5 rounds for 1 yuan, and 500 rounds cost 100 yuan. It's all for money. After recruiting gunners and maintenance soldiers, Yi Bai only had over 1,000 yuan left in his hands. He finally obtained 1,500 yuan again from the salvaged wooden boxes, and spent another 1,200 yuan, leaving only over 1,300 yuan. The artillery on the aft deck requires a gunner, and this heavy machine gun also requires a gunner, which will cost another 1,000 yuan. The remaining 300 yuan cannot be used anymore and must be kept for future use. Chapter 10. Second day. You are listening at Naval Full.audio. All weapons are fully equipped, so personnel cannot be left behind. After all, it is for the safety of the Yanhuang ship, which is related to one's own life. One cannot help but hesitate. Yi Bai waved his hand and directly chose to recruit crew members. Detected that the player is recruiting crew members, deducting 1,000 yuan in funds, recruitment process is starting. Congratulations to the player for successfully recruiting an expert-level machine gunner and a proficient-level naval gun gunner. Wishing the player a pleasant game. A hint of joy flashed on Yi Bai's face. The recruitment result was quite good this time. The gunner is at the proficiency level, and the machine gunner is even more at the expert level. This is one level higher than the proficiency level. It seems that after crossing over, his luck has indeed improved. Arrange the 2 newly recruited crew members to their respective positions and instruct others to take turns on duty and rest. Yi Bai also returned to the cabin on the 2nd floor, which was his bedroom. Fortunately, the system did not make it too difficult for players. Although the world of navigation is full of dangers, at least survival is not a problem. The difficulty of obtaining food and water is not high. In the bedroom of the patrol boat, there are also all kinds of sheets and bedding, so players do not need to purchase them separately. Lying on the soft bed, Yi Bai felt that his exhaustion had dissipated a lot all over his body. However, the day had left him exhausted. The fear of crossing into such a world full of danger for the first time, as well as the thrill and excitement of the first naval battle, especially after carrying so many shells and lacking exercise, Yi Bai, who was in a sub-healthy state, was very tired and could be described as a dual torment of spirit and body. Originally, Yi Bai wanted to enter the chat channel and take a look. Although he didn't come from the same planet, since the system placed himself in the camp of Blue Star, to some extent, he and Blue Star players belong to the same front line. Joining forces to fight against aliens is also intentional. However, Yi Bai was too tired. As soon as he lay in bed, his head against the pillow, he quickly fell asleep. After Yi Bai woke up, he realized that the night had passed like this. At this time, the sky was already bright and the sun was once again hanging in the sky. After a brief wash, having eaten some bread and water, and resting his stomach, Yi Bai patrolled the Yanhuang ship and found that all the crew members he recruited were performing their respective duties. The gunner and machine gunner were carefully wiping their respective weapons, while the pilot stayed in the cockpit. Without Yi Bai's command, the engine of the Yanhuang did not start at this moment, still floating on the sea. The idle maintenance soldiers stood on the front deck, staring at the situation on the sea, and next to them was a drifted wooden box that was salvaged at an unknown time. Seeing the conscious behavior of the crew, Yi Bai nodded with satisfaction. It was these crew members recruited through the system who were reliable, loyal, and responsible. If they were to cooperate with other Blue Star humans, who knows what kind of performance these guys would have. Even if humans who do not belong to the Blue Star world are classified into the Blue Star human camp by the system, Yi Bai still maintains a high level of vigilance towards players in the Blue Star world. In his view, both the humans in the Blue Star world and those alien beings attempting to invade the Blue Star world can be said to be aliens. Let the pilot start the Yanhuang and continue sailing on the sea. Each player's patrol boat's fuel tank is filled with fuel. According to the pilot's analysis, this fuel is enough for the Yanhuang to sail for 3 to 4 days. Therefore, for the time being, Yi Bai doesn't have to worry about the shortage of fuel on the Yanhuang ship. Moreover, there is a chance to obtain fuel from the beautiful wooden crates salvaged. Even if there is no fuel available, it can still be purchased from the system mall, but it only requires money. Amidst the roar of the engine, the Yanhuang slowly began to move on the sea surface. Yi Bai sat cross-legged on the front deck, instructing the maintenance personnel to pay attention to the situation on the sea surface and immediately notifying him of any drifting wooden crates. And he himself took this opportunity to open the chat section of the system, ready to see how other players are doing. I don't know how many people in the Blue Star world have been dragged into this big sailing world. As soon as I opened the chat section, the messages inside flowed like a waterfall, making it impossible for people to see the content clearly. However, the message panel of the chat section can be fixed by players, no longer refreshed, and manually dragged by players. Although it is troublesome, at least it can allow people to see the message information of other players clearly. Looking through the comments of Blue Star players one by one, Yi Bai was somewhat disappointed that most of the comments were lacking in nutrition, and were the sickly moans of those cruel players who had not fully adapted to the world of navigation. Some players keep leaving messages on chat channels, trying to find their loved ones and friends, as well as those seeking care, thigh-hugging, and resources, all of which fully demonstrate the diversity of life. These comments made Yi Bai feel a headache, but in order to obtain more intelligence and information from the comments of other players, Yi Bai had to grit his teeth and continue reading. Fortunately, the chat channel did not disappoint Yi Bai. Although most of the comments from Blue Star players were empty talk, there were still some intelligence information that Yi Bai needed. During yesterday's voyage, many Blue Star players had an encounter with the patrol boats of different star players. It can be seen from their messages on the chat channel that they should have won. Otherwise, they would have no chance to roast. In this situation, Yi Bai didn't feel any surprise. He was just an ordinary young man on Earth who could win the first sea battle in his life, and those Blue Star players were not necessarily inferior to him. Moreover, not all Blue Star players are ordinary people, and there must be many soldiers, even Navy soldiers, whose performance in naval battles is definitely better than that of ordinary players. Among the comments from these players, what caught Yi Bai's attention the most was the situation of the drifting wooden boxes that the players salvaged. According to the comments from these players, it can be seen that there are many players who have salvaged drifting wooden boxes from the sea, and many players have even salvaged several drifting wooden boxes, which is not surprising. What truly made Yi Bai feel incredible was that, according to the players who salvaged the drifting wooden box, not every drifting wooden box can obtain supplies, and there is a considerable chance of an empty box appearing. Yesterday, Yi Bai learned about this situation on the chat channel. At that time, he didn't pay attention. After all, he only salvaged a total of 4 drifting wooden boxes at that time, and each box contained materials. When the base is too small, it is impossible to make accurate judgments and can only be attributed to one's good luck.